Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm here like every Wednesday for an hour, 10 a.m. here in St. Louis. And I'm here to answer your questions, to discuss various topics about board games and otherwise, and to ask you a few questions because I have a few things that I want to learn from you as well. Anything goes here. Feel free to ask me anything. I see a few people, Nate, KJL, and Carol have already joined in the comments. I do see all the comments unless I accidentally don't see it, but they do appear on the screen the screen here on StreamYard. Here's Nicole as well. I have some topics to cover today, including a lawsuit that we are filing against the executive branch, a visit to Kansas City this past weekend, and some games I've been playing recently, along with a question that I have for you about a list that I want to make about games. Just to briefly cover some topics that I've covered recently on the blog and our YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, my topic this past weekend was about 10 of my favorite mechanisms in games. I know I talk about a lot about mechanisms on the YouTube channel, but this was picking the mechanisms that when I hear that a game has this type of mechanism in it, I am very curious to learn more about that game and probably get it to the table and play it. So I did a list 5 years ago of this, and then I have so many other mechanisms that I love that I've done another one, and I've actually filmed part 3 as well, which will come out in a month or so. So that was this past weekend. If you want to see some of my favorite mechanisms in games, and did a post. I'm trying to think of the post that I did last Thursday before the tariff post. Can't remember what that was because the tariff / lawsuit post has been the biggest thing on my mind over the last couple of days. I see a lot of support in the comments. Thank you for saying that. So brief overview of what's going on if you're not familiar with it, and you can check out the blog post on Monday to see what's going on, is that we have joined a lawsuit that has not yet been filed. The suit will be filed later this week. I talked about it on Monday because I wanted to make sure that any other plaintiffs, any other clients, people who wanted to, or companies who wanted to join this lawsuit had the opportunity to do so. And so the suit will be filed probably later this week, maybe early next week. The idea is that we believe that the president does not actually have the power to implement the tariffs that he has implemented, and that the tariffs are causing irreparable harm onto largely U.S. companies, but also any company that makes things in China and imports those things to sell in the U.S. And kind of the focus of why this is particularly important to me now, and something that unfortunately has been ignored by anyone who believes in the tariffs, is that we started production on a massive number of games, 250,000 units of games and other products back in January before the tariffs were even implemented. And now coming close to completing production of those products, we are now liable if we decide to ship those products to the US. They're essentially held hostage unless we pay 145% tariff. So for every $10 that we spent to make these products that we have already made, we now have to pay $14.50. In addition to that, that was the manufacturing cost. This is a tax that we are now paying to the US government just to get those goods into the US. And that is unacceptable to me. And so we're standing up against it and hoping, and we know that we're not alone. In fact, I've heard from over 150 other companies across a variety of industries, not just the game industry, but a variety of industries who have contacted me in the last 48 hours to say that they want to support this cause. I don't think that many people will actually be in the lawsuit because the firm in charge of the lawsuit, I think, is looking for a smaller number of clients than that. But right now, 66 companies have filled out the form that I shared with companies who wanted to just say that this has been affecting them. And my heart goes out to all of them. Many of them are in a similar position to us, where they started production on games or whatever products they make before the tariffs were in place, and now their goods are being held hostage as a result of the tariffs. So again, it's unacceptable to me. I think it gets in the way of our pursuit of happiness, which is our right in the US, and I'm going to do what I can to fight for it. So that is a brief recap of what's going on with the lawsuit. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I can't speak to the specific terms of the lawsuit because it hasn't been filed yet, but I can answer some questions. Oh, okay, thank you, Jay Zarzago, for helping me remember what last week's blog post was about. It was about finalizing typesetting and proofreading Vantage. That's right. Last week was a Vantage update, and I had a blog post that went along with that update. Vantage is the big open world cooperative game that I've been working on for a long time and revealing update by update over the last year. And Vantage is one of these games that we started production on back in January, and we're getting very close to shipping out the first batch to all of our fulfillment centers worldwide, including in the US. Oh, Corey has a nice comment. Corey just got back from a cruise. Yeah, this awesome, Corey. I saw your post about the Meeples at Sea board game cruise, and it was wonderful to see you having a great time there. It looks like your kids had a particularly great time as well. And thank you for picking up some chocolate samplers. That's very kind of you. Today's treat of the day isn't actually chocolate. Usually I have a chocolate of the day, but I want to feature another treat that I got myself because I haven't bought this in a while. And I was at the grocery store yesterday and picked it up. This is my favorite potato chip. If you're ever in St. Louis, I highly recommend getting, I guess the company is called, it used to be called Billy Goat. Now it's called Goat Eats, apparently. But these are, I think, the best potato chips in the world. The ingredients are super simple. Like there's not a lot in them. It's Idaho russet potatoes, canola oil, salt, onion, garlic, spices, and sugar. It's I guess the potatoes come from Idaho, but they're made here in the US as far as I know. It says made in the USA, but I'm pretty sure they're made in the US. These are the best chips that I've ever had. I love these chips. And I haven't had them in a while. I don't know why, but I got a bag and I'm going to obviously not eat this whole bag, but have a little bit to munch on sometime today. That is my treat of the day. What is your treat of the day? What are you treating yourself today? Whether it's food or another indulgence or just something that brings you joy, let me know in the comments. Here's a question. Okay, why would the president not have the power to implement tariffs? It's a good question because my understanding actually was that the president did have the power to implement tariffs. That's what the president has been telling us. But my understanding after digging deeper into this is that it's part of it is complicated beyond my comprehension. But a key part of it is that the president has the power to implement tariffs with the authority of Congress if we're in a national state of emergency. And while the world is kind of constantly in crisis, that doesn't make it an emergency situation. And this isn't an emergency situation. Also, kind of crucially, tariffs are the responsibility of and the authority of Congress, not the president. That is the overarching answer to that question. But some people who are much more well-versed in the law might have a better answer to that question in the comments. Monkey Butler Lab says there was an interesting point brought up by another YouTuber about why do you have to be filing this lawsuit and why hasn't the Board Game Association done it? GAMA, the Board Game Association, is taking a different approach with this where they are trying to get an exemption to the tariffs instead. They're trying to carve out exemption for board games instead of what we're doing, which is challenging the legality of the tariffs themselves. So they are doing something just in a different way. G-Money says, are you saying it's unconstitutional for the president to, in an executive order to raise tariffs? You think it needs to go through the legislative branch? Yeah, so it's Congress's authority to apply tariffs. The president only has a carve out if it is an emergency situation. Again, I want to hold my tongue to a certain extent about this because it will be a lot clearer when the lawsuit is filed. And it is not, I'm not the one filing. I'm a participant in the lawsuit, but I am not a lawyer filing the lawsuit. So if anyone is a lawyer and wants to speak about this in the comments, you are more than welcome to do so. But I can't speak to the specifics of the case until it is actually filed later this week. Ideally, later this week. Garrett says, would it be possible to add a tariff jar or the option to pay addition at checkout to cover folks who are unable to cover the tariffs on their orders for Vantage? I would be happy to contribute where I can. Garrett, that's a great question and a very generous question. And so this is one topic that I brought up in the blog post, which is how are these tariffs, if the tariffs continue, how will they impact all these games that we've already made in China that we're planning to soon ship to the US, including Vantage? My hope is that the tariffs, that we will not actually increase the cost of Vantage in the US either at all or very, very slightly as a result of the tariffs. That is my hope. That is my goal. We are also planning at checkout, if the tariffs do stand, at checkout for Vantage to offer the current plan. I'll just say the current plan. I don't know if this will stand, but I'll say what we're currently thinking is we're planning to add the option at checkout to add a gift card to your cart, a $14.50 gift card because the tariffs are 145%. That you can optionally add to your cart if you want to. And then it is up to you over the years if you decide to spend that gift card or not, or if you decide to treat it as kind of part of the intention is to help cover the tariffs that we are paying. This will not go into effect until we start to sell Vantage. We have not yet sold Vantage to anyone. We're waiting until we actually receive it before we start doing that. So yeah, that is the current plan, Garrett. Carol says, has anything moved forward with the Wingspan fan? You're calling it an expansion. I don't know if we'll exactly call it that, but fan packs, fan design bird packs. This is different than the fan art packs. These are cards that are actually, these are new birds from continents we've already covered that fans have designed and play tested over the years. You've probably seen talk about them in the comments on Board Game Geek or on the Wingspan Facebook group. And we are moving forward on it. We haven't moved forward with production yet, but we're moving forward with the creation process of these cards. They've already been designed, but we have to put them into actual card format so that we can actually print them. So we are moving forward with that, but I don't have a timeline on that yet, Carol. While I am just scrolling through looking for questions here, I do really appreciate your supportive comments and also your constructive comments. Both. I appreciate both. Mark says, are there any other game companies that you know for sure have joined the lawsuit? I don't know for sure, Mark. There are a few companies that I know that are similar in size to Stonemaier Games that I think the law firm is hoping to feature in particular because the burden of the tariffs is higher on them. The burden of the tariffs is relevant for everyone, but given that they're not trying to take on 150 new clients, I think they're picking a few where they can demonstrate a particularly high burden. And so I have an idea of a few of these companies that might be joining, but it's not my information to share, especially without the suit being actually filed yet. I see a comment about there's no right to happiness. Yeah, I don't think I said that. I said there's a right to the pursuit of happiness. I don't think I said that happiness is a right, but I am all about happiness and joy and spreading joy. That is something that I believe in, but it is the pursuit of happiness that that is part of a core of being in the U.S., a U.S. citizen. Feel free to go back and watch that. Let me know if I misspoke, but that is me misspeaking if I did say that, but it is the pursuit of happiness that I'm referring to. Gary says, were orders for Vantage taken already? No, we haven't sold anything of Vantage yet. We don't sell our products until we've actually received them and are ready to ship them to you. So no orders for Vantage yet. Icy Skater also says, is Vantage still on track for release? It is. Yeah, production for Vantage is at the very tail end of the stages for production right now. We're doing it in 2 waves because it's a 50,000 unit print run, pretty big print run. But yeah, it is still going well and should wrap up very soon. I see Easter candy stated as a treat from Katie over here. Kevin, Kevin says, I was reading somewhere about importing and shipping companies are using the wrong import code, and that is causing the board games to get 145% tariffs and not the 20% tariffs. Is there validity to this? There is not. No, unfortunately, there is an article that is circulating that is just full of misinformation. I don't know the intent of this person and why they're spreading this information. I can't pretend to understand that, but there are 2 different tariffs that fall under 2 different codes. One is the 20% tariff that is associated with fentanyl, and the other is the 125% tariffs that have been added since then. Both apply currently to tabletop games. So please, if you see that article, I don't know what to do, but don't spread it. That is absolutely misinformation. That is inaccurate. And I think one easy way to keep in mind is if it were true, game companies would be very happy about that. We want that to be true, but it is not true, unfortunately. Our tariffs are 145%. It's 20% plus another 125%. Gary says, will the shipping cost be increased? Gary, I think your previous question was about Vantage. Yeah, so the shipping costs are not impacted by the tariffs. I mean, in the greater macroeconomics of tariffs, freight shipping costs are probably impacted, but no, your shipping costs, your fulfillment costs, your shipping fees when you order from us are not impacted by the tariffs. All right, Jeremy has brought up the second topic that I had, the Kansas City area. So Jeremy, we were in Kansas City this past weekend visiting Megan's family, and we went there with Megan's brother and his wife, and we played at a beautiful course called Black Hoof in Kansas City. I'd never played this course before. It's a beautiful course, and there was one hole where we walked. There's a few times where I brought out my camera in hopes that we might get an ace, and there was one hole that looked like there would be pretty good chances that we might have at least a run on the basket. And the very first person to shoot on this basket was Eric, and Eric got an ace on it. So first shot. So it wasn't like someone asked on Instagram if it was like if we had to do many takes to get this shot. No, this was the very first shot that any of us had ever taken on this hole. And Eric aced it. So it's on Instagram. If you want to check out at Jamey Stonemaier on Instagram, you can see Eric get an ace with his first time on this hole, first shot, first take. It was pretty awesome. And it's the first time that I've ever gotten one on camera. I don't pull out my camera all that often when to like film friends taking disc golf shots because we shoot thousands of drives over the course of the year. I don't want to be filming every single one of them. But this one, I just had a good feeling about it. And we were shooting from fairly close range, about 200 feet, maybe 220 feet. Just had a good feeling about it and got it on camera. It was incredible. I see Nelson commenting about his cat who has asthma. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Nelson. Here, Wayne says it in a nice way. Tariffs are a tax, and Congress has the sole authority to levy taxes, but they have given loopholes for the executive branch to do so. The question is how those loopholes are being used. This is the emergency carve-out that I mentioned earlier. Rule also asked the question about tariffs. Are tariffs forcing any changes on price and release date of Vantage? The overall answer I talked about a few minutes ago, but I guess I'm behind on comments, is no. They're not having an impact, and definitely not at least a big impact on it in the US and not anywhere else in the world. I see some other comments in support of this. I'm just scrolling through looking for questions since I am a little bit behind on questions right now. Okay. Edward says, have you ever considered being a mentor? I know you keep busy and you don't need other things on your plate. Edward, I appreciate you asking about that. I have a blog post about that from a while ago. My mentality about mentorship is I create a lot of content with the hopes of adding value to other people, whether it's our blog post about crowdfunding and entrepreneurship and marketing, or it's the YouTube channel about game design. And my philosophy is I would rather try to help and start conversations with a lot of people all at once, rather than just helping one individual person one at a time, where only one other person benefits. That is my general philosophy about mentorship. And also I have a lot to learn from other people too. So by posting blog posts and videos, I get to start conversations like the one that we're having right now, where I get to learn from you and hopefully you get to learn from me as well. Let me catch up a little bit on comments and then I'll throw out today's question of the day. Garrett says, how is Walter doing? I'm sure he's loving your new reading contraption. So Garrett's referring to a new setup that I have for my Kindle, where it's something I've been kind of wanting for a long time and it finally became a reality. So I have it's an apparatus that now attaches to the back of my bed frame that goes over my head and reaches over my face like this and holds my Kindle. And on that Kindle now, I have a little attachment that attaches to the Kindle where I can turn the page with a remote control that I hold in my hand. So I don't need to reach up and touch the Kindle, which seems like a minor inconvenience, but it actually makes the Kindle like really shake when I do that. And Walter is very happy about it, my cat Walter, because Walter can now sit on my tummy. He gets his tummy time at night, which he loves, while I'm reading, and I don't disturb him by touching the Kindle or having the Kindle like suspended in one hand above his head or on a pillow. So Walter was very happy about that. Last night, he was on my belly for a good 20, 30 minutes while I was reading. Right now, I'm reading a book called The Spell Book. I believe it's called, no, Spell Shop. The Spell Shop. It's a cozy fantasy novel along the lines of Legends and Lattes, if anyone has read that. And I'm really enjoying it so far. I also finished Sunrise on the Reaping, the latest Hunger Games book recently, and really enjoyed that as well. What are you all reading right now? Are you reading anything particularly entertaining? Okay. Charles says, will there be an option to pick up Vantage at Gen Con if the timing works out? Good question, Charles. We don't do pickup at conventions except for Geekway. We're doing convention at pickup at Geekway, not for Vantage, but for other games. We don't do it for most conventions, because at most conventions we partner with someone else who is actually handling the retail side of things. At Gen Con, we partner with MeepleSource. And so MeepleSource is actually the game there. They might do pickup through their web store, but not through our web store. And thank you, Miles, for clarifying that I did say Pursuit. I thought I said Pursuit of Happiness. Let's see. Monkey Butler says, is printing the MSRP on the box required? No, that is not a requirement. And I'm not aware of many companies that print the MSRP on the box. If not, do tariffs provide a good reason to not do so going forward? I'm not aware of any good reason to actually print the MSRP on the box in the first place, so I wouldn't suggest doing that. Matthew says, do you offer support to smaller game conventions? Matthew, the way that we primarily support conventions is if a convention has a play and win section at their convention, we often, almost always, if they fill out our form for play and win, we often send games to them for their play and win section specifically. I do an annual blog post about play and win so that conventions know about it. And we have a very well-populated, publicly editable Google sheet that any convention can go on the sheet and add their information so that both we can see it and other companies that like play and win can also support that. Rui says, I'm in Europe. Do you ship Vantage directly there, avoiding tariffs? Yes, we do. Yeah, our method for shipping worldwide for pretty much the duration of our existence at Stonemaier Games has been that we make our products with Panda in China, a company that we trust, who treats their employees well. They communicate well, they make quality products, and then they ship it to our fulfillment centers in Canada, US, Europe, and Australia. And that way we can ship directly to consumers within those areas. In fact, we even have, you can see this on our website, we have different web stores for each of those regions now. So you don't, if you're in Europe, you will go to the European web store to make purchases. Carol says, what's been the best part of your last week? I honestly get really excited about aces and disc golf. And so it was awesome to, even though it wasn't my ace, it was awesome to witness that ace when we were playing disc golf in Kansas City. So I had a lot of fun with that. And just in general, I had a good time going to Kansas City. We had a great meal at a restaurant called True Food Kitchen. I think it's a small chain that was funded at least partially by Oprah. And it was just really good food. And I have some leftovers here that I'm going to have for lunch today. So overall, I would say the trip to Kansas City was really nice this past weekend. Let's say various ideas. It says, how do you remain so positive with these crushing decisions outside our control? I don't own a business and I'm super stressed. I hear you. It's a stressful time. I can't say honestly that I'm always positive. That I'm human. There are definitely moments where it's where I feel like a lot of things are not in my control, or that things aren't going well for a lot of people. How do I stay positive? I think it's a choice, honestly. You may have seen this on my YouTube channel or the blog. I try to choose to stay positive about things. I try to when I play a game, I try to focus on the thing that I like most about it, not the thing that I like worst about it. So I think it's an actual choice to say, I want to look at this through a positive lens. And not everything has that positive lens, but I try not to focus on those things if I can. Michael says, is there a specific release date for the Wingspan Asia digital expansion? I don't think that Monster Couch has announced an official date yet, not that I'm aware Okay. Alan says it would be great to see you at the UK Games Expo, as the European market will be even more important in the current climate. I totally agree. And we generally have a presence at the UK Games Expo, whether it's a booth that we are in partnership with, or a localization partner, or a retailer or distributor in Europe. And I believe we do have a presence there this year. I will look that up as I'm talking to you right now. If you're ever curious about which conventions we are attending, if you go to our website and go to news and then events and conventions, you can see what events and conventions we're attending. So yes, UK Games Expo, you can find us, you can find games, our games there through Inside Up Games. We're partnering with them at this particular convention. So we will be there. Jason says, how do you decide how many copies of a game to produce? Do you ever end up with too many or too few? That's a great question, because it is a forecasting, guessing game. There's a question of how do we know how many reprints to produce versus how many of a brand new game do we produce? And in both of them, we are looking at past data. Easier when we have already made the game in the past versus a new game. And we're also looking at orders that we have from distributors. And we're also estimating how many orders we think will sell on our web store. And for that one, I will say it is really helpful when people who are interested in a game that we're making, if they indicate that interest in some semi-official way. For example, for Vantage, if you are interested in getting Vantage, it is really helpful if you sign up for the Vantage newsletter. That is a data point that we use to determine demand for a product that we have not yet at least finished production for. At this point, we can't change the quantity of Vantage. We're well into production. But back when we started production, that is a data point that we could use. It is even more of a mystery, though, because oftentimes we don't announce our games until we are ready, very close to being ready to ship them. And so for those games, it is more of a forecasting, guessing game based on past data and what our distributors have said that they want for that game. Viper22 Husky says, after watching the board game unboxing of Vantage, it looks more like a card-based game than a typical board game. Is that accurate? I don't know if Vantage is really... Vantage has a lot of elements of other games, but it is also something that I don't think has really been done before. Vantage does have a lot of cards, but it is also a game that has a board. It has tableaus that you're building, and it has a lot of custom dice to it as well. So it is a more card-driven game. It has 1,300 total cards, and 400 of those cards are double-sided. They have different locations on either side of the cards. But yeah, it isn't a tile-driven game, and it isn't really focused all that much on the board. It's much more focused on the tableau of cards that you're building and the locations on cards that you're looking at from a first-person perspective as you explore this vast planet of Vantage. Board Game Byte says, can you tell us more about the upgraded components that will be available for Vantage in addition to the metal coins? And I actually have some on my desk right next to me, so I will hold up some of them. So there are 3 accessories. I held up 2. 3 optional accessories for Vantage. 1 are the metal coins. 1 are wooden versions of the skill tokens that you use to decrease the cost of actions in the game, whether it's for you or you're helping out other players, part of the cooperative element of the game. And the third part is, I mentioned just a second ago that you're building a card tableau in Vantage. These are all the things that you discover as you're exploring the world of Vantage. There are 900 different discoverable cards, and some of them you can build into your character. Or many of them end up building into your character. And this is the optional player mats that you can get to facilitate that card grid, because it's a 3x3 grid. It can't be any bigger than that. And this is an example of one of them. The pack of these is a pack of 6 different playable characters in the game. It is a 1 to 6 player game. And so you can't quite, I don't know if you can quite tell on camera, but these are dual layered. So the purpose of this is that you can slot in the cards here around your character, and that way they don't move around as you're picking up tokens and putting down dice and tokens on these mats. So that is one of the 3 accessories in Vantage, optional accessories. Derek says, any thoughts on dabbling in the print and play realm if these tariffs persist? And Derek's also referring to Rolling Realms, which started out. I don't think so. I'm not planning to do that. The joy for me in making tabletop games is largely in creating something that you don't have to put together, that we've put together for you. Yeah. Let's see. Tariff says, are there any plans for game expansions on Board Game Arena? I'd love to see some for viticulture there. In general, our strategy for Board Game Arena is to give people an introduction to games and give people a way to play the core games that we strongly believe in with friends from around the world, friends and strangers from around the world. But it is meant to be at least partially just a taste of those games, where we are hoping that people who fall in love with our games there use that to go buy the game or buy expansions for the game. We don't want to entirely replace the full, not the full game, but a full brand on Board Game Arena. That said, I am open to them putting Tuscany on there. So that is one viticulture expansion that at least the extended board portion of Tuscany, I am open to them putting that on Board Game Arena. I just think they haven't done it yet. The developers haven't done it. Curve Cut Games and Ideas says, sort of a side question, would you recommend a wait and see approach to running a Kickstarter campaign this summer? It's a good question. My current thought about crowdfunding is that, like, in general, crowdfunding is kind of a safe area right now, because if you're just charging for the product that you're making, but not charging for shipping or tariffs as part of the product that you're making, those costs can be applied later in the future based on the current state of the world whenever you're ready to ship many months in the future. That said, consumers aren't really going along with that train of thought right now. I'm not seeing crowdfunding campaigns. There are exceptions to this. I backed the new Earth expansion. It's doing great. I'm glad to see it doing well. There are exceptions to that, but in general, I am not seeing new first-time crowdfunding campaigns do particularly well right now. And I think that's partially because consumers are nervous about the viability of producing games right now. And so consumers are trusting more established companies right now in crowdfunding than new creators, which is unfortunate, but it does appear to be what I'm seeing right now on crowdfunding. Anyway, I keep not saying my question of the day. So let me throw this out at you, and then I'll answer some more of your questions. I do really appreciate your questions. My question of the day today, it's a little bit Stonemaier centric, so bear with me if you don't know much about our games. But my question of the day today is, a few years ago, I published a video that was about my favorite games that I think Stonemaier Games could have published if those games had been submitted to us by the designers. We have a certain type of game that we generally publish, like they're games that generally play from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 players. They are generally event games, so they're not short filler games. They're also not games that you need to plan a whole weekend around. Our games are typically around 60 to 90 minutes. And they're often medium weight Euro games with high levels of agency and some amount of component hooks on the table, things that you like to pick up and look at and touch and play with. So the question I have for you is, I have not filmed a video like this in the last 5 years. So for the games released over the last 5 years from other publishers, what is a game that you've seen that you think would have fit into the Stonemaier Games portfolio, a game that you could have seen as a Stonemaier game? And keep in mind that one of the major requirements for this is that it needs to play out of the box at least up to 5 players. It cannot be a 1 to 4 player game. That would not be applicable. So it has to play out of the box at least 5 players. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for those types of games, and I'll make a note of them because I plan on filming a video about that soon. Carol says, has Walter tried using the Kindle as a scratching post yet? And just last night, Walter did start to add his little gum sense onto the Kindle. So the Kindle is now, he is now aware that something is above him as he is snuggling on me at night. This is my cat, Walter. Stefan says, I followed a lot about the tariffs, but I also understand there's something ongoing with the containers from China. Do you have a high-level summary of the container thing, and how could it impact you? I may not know exactly what you're talking about, Stefan, but from what I understand, because a lot of companies are holding off shipments in China right now, it means that demand for shipping from China has gone down. And as a result, the cost of freight shipping from China to the US right now is a little bit lower than normal. That is my only understanding of what's going on. But there is a pretty important ecosystem set up between shipping containers to the US, and then those containers being sent back back to China. So if that ecosystem is disrupted by the impacts of the tariffs, that has other implications as well. Franklin Ski says, would the Wingspan fan cards be considered official, meaning they are balanced in the same way that the expansions are? Do you see them similar to the Scythe and Counter promo cards? They're in the same general realm. For the Scythe promo cards, I didn't ask for people to playtest them. I just asked for ideas for cards. This was a long time ago, and I ended up really redesigning almost every single one of them for consistency and balance and things like that with the game. They are zany still, but I believe that they are balanced as encounters go. This is a little bit different. With the Wingspan fan design cards, they have been heavily playtested. They are balanced. They are being peer reviewed and reviewed by me. Elizabeth Hargrave is also available to, or she's not available to, she is aware of them, and she might be reviewing the cards as well. So I would consider them official cards, not on the same level as something designed. Like there's different tiers of official, right? There's official as in it's something designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, and then there's like Stonemaier approved. Like we are officially making these cards, and so there is a level of approval that goes along with that. Just scrolling through, looking for questions, but I used to see some great book suggestions here. Chad says, have I read, he just finished the Mistborn trilogy, reading Warbreaker right now, and he loves the character Light Song. You know, I think, Chad, I've read everything at this point, everything in the Cosmere that Brandon Sanderson has written. So I have read Warbreaker, but it's been a little while. I can't remember who Light Song is. Nick says, what software do you use for live streams? I use software called StreamYard. And Nick, I'm glad you asked about that because it reminded me that today I'm hosting the 80th game of Rolling Realms. I have live streamed now 80 or 79 games of Rolling Realms. Today will be round 1 of game 80. And as part of game 80 is all about Stonemaier Games. So I need to make sure I have them out and ready. But yeah, we're doing Stonemaier promo realms today. Games that Stonemaier games that we have put into Rolling Realms form that were not in the original Rolling Realms. That will be today at 3 o'clock St. Louis time. What other topics did I have to cover today? So games that I played recently, I guess that was the last topic in the subject line. I played It's a Wonderful World on Board Game Arena recently. I have a bi-weekly Board Game Arena game night. Had fun playing that. It's been a while since I played It's a Wonderful World. We played Just One. We didn't play a lot of games other than disc golf in Kansas City, but we did have a fun game of Just One. And I also played Age of Innovation last week, along with last week was digital game night and Age of Innovation in person at another game night. We played that back-to-back weeks at that game night, and it's kind of been a fun revival for it. That group, I think, played out that game, and now they've got it back to the table, and I've had a lot of fun playing it back-to-back weeks. In fact, we played it quickly. I appreciate different playing styles in games, but I do like when people plan ahead for their turn and are ready to go when it's their turn. And so we played a 4-player game of Age of Innovation in 2 hours, including setup and cleanup, which is, I think, somewhat rare for that game. And it was pretty awesome to have that full experience in just 2 hours. Paul says, he noticed that Stonemaier is scheduled to be at Dice Tower East as an exhibitor. Are you coming and getting some sun in Florida? I will not be there. Let's see who will be there. Dice Tower East. Meeple Source will be there. Yeah. I don't think anyone from Stonemaier Games will be attending that convention, but we are long-term partners with Meeple Source, and I'm sure they'll represent us very well there. Joshua says, have you checked out the video game Blueprints? It's a puzzle game similar to Myst from the 90s, and it has board game adjacent similarities that I love, and you may be interested in it. Thank you, Joshua, for recommending it. Yeah, I played Blueprints about a year ago. I played the demo version. I think Garrett recommended it, and I loved it. I think I mentioned it actually as my favorite digital game from 2024, even though it wasn't actually fully released until very recently. I have not played the full version yet. But yeah, I have a video about it from last year because I loved playing the demo, and the demo was pretty robust too. You got a pretty good taste of the game from the demo, but I'm looking forward to getting back to it. Yeah. Tony says, yeah, I wanted to talk about TV briefly. Tony says, how psyched are you for Andor Season 2, which I believe the first episode released yesterday. So I am very excited about that, Tony. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to let a few episodes pile up or if we're just going to start watching because I can't wait to see what's happening with it. I'm very excited. We're also getting ready to start The Last of Us, which we have piled up a few episodes of The Last of Us season 2, and we're watching Survivor, Top Chef season 22, I think, and we're watching Ghosts, the latest season of the US version of Ghosts. Adam says, any plans to develop Blingspan, where you create a stunning collection of jewelry? I like the name Blingspan, Adam. That's a fun name. But no, currently we have our hands full with birds, dragons, and fish, and so we don't have anything else at all in the works for other spin-offs. We're just focused on the expansions for these games that we have in the works right now. Hey, Jeff. Jeff says, are you planning on doing more of the top 3 minis during Livecast? You know, Jeff, I should. I think I actually ran out of topics for doing those minis, but I will do some more of them for topics that I don't feel like I have a full top 10 list for them, but I still want to talk about them a little bit. So I think I will do them a little bit in the future. Mark says, what's your favorite faction in Tapestry? Mark, I don't know if I actually have a favorite faction in Tapestry. There's so many that I have fun playing and so many that I haven't played in a while that, I don't know if I have a clear favorite. There is a gambling one, a few gambling ones, actually. I think there's the Gamblers, and there's one other one that involves, maybe the Alchemist, involves a little bit of push your luck. I do generally enjoy that mechanism in games, especially games where I have a lot of other agency in other ways. I do enjoy those factions, but I don't know if I'd call them my favorite. All right, I know I'm still behind on comments, so I will try to catch up here. Chad says, how has your experience announcing Vantage well before distribution gone? You typically like to announce a new game when it's ready to ship. I'm curious if you found benefits of the Vantage model. The primary reason I did it for Vantage is I have, and you've probably seen this in the updates for Vantage, they are big, long, robust updates. They take quite a bit of time to write and put together. Multiple people are involved in putting them together and proofreading them. And it's a lot. It's a lot of stories to tell. And I decided it would be better to spread them out a little bit over the course of the year and to help us gauge demand for the game, rather than have it wait till, like a week of updates where people, I think, would be a little bit overwhelmed with the length of the updates that Vantage are if they waited to the last week. Although you can still wait. All the Vantage updates are archived on our website. If this is the first time you've ever heard of Vantage, you can go read those updates at your own pace, as you wish. So I think it was the right choice for Vantage, Chad. For most other games, I still prefer our method of building that excitement right before we're ready to actually launch the game on our web store and then ship it to people. Jay Zargo says, I was reading a post of yours about counterfeiting. Do you think this may increase with tariffs? That's a good question. We have had counterfeit issues with our games over the years. And so, like, most recently, we haven't authorized our former partners in Russia, to sell games in Russia ever since Russia invaded Ukraine. And about a year ago, maybe a little bit more recently, we started to hear from those partners that those games were being replaced by counterfeits in Russia. And so that was when we had some talks with those partners about allowing them to make the official versions of the games that they were making before the invasion happened and sell them to counteract those counterfeits. They're still not allowed to make new products and sell them in Russia. I don't, that was the situation where we stopped selling games in a specific region. So I don't know if tariffs, unless we like completely stop selling in the US, which I don't see happening. I think that's a situation where we could see counterfeits, but I don't see the tariffs directly impacting counterfeits right now. Jojo067 Abel says, are there similarities between Vantage and Earthborn Rangers? Both are eco-conscious, card-driven games. Both, I think, call themselves open world games. I would say that they're open world in very, very different ways. The mechanisms are very different. The card play is very different. Earthborn Rangers is a campaign with a heavy character building up front. Vantage has neither of those things. It's not a campaign game. It doesn't have the heavy character building. So I would say really the only main characteristics are both are open world games in very different ways, and both are card driven, and both try to take eco-friendliness into consideration in creating the games. Okay, let's see. FG FG Bison says, hello, Jamey. You're looking at the Vantage player mat you showed. Are the sleeve cards fit? Will the sleeve cards fit on the dual layered slot? There's sleeve cards. Vantage is not built for sleeve cards. It's not a game where you need to sleeve cards. You never shuffle the cards in Vantage. And so nothing in Vantage is built for sleeve cards. If we had, so think about this from the perspective of that question. If we built Vantage, a game with 1,300 cards around fitting sleeve cards in the box would be double the size. So the majority of people who don't sleeve cards would be negatively impacted by that. And the player mats would be too big to fit in the box. So everyone will be negatively impacted by that. So no, Vantage is not built at all for sleeving cards, and you really don't need to because you never shuffle the cards in Vantage. Around the Stump game says, did you see Pirates of the High Teas? New publisher, did absolutely fantastic. You know, I saw some ads for that, but I didn't dig into it, I must admit. So no, I don't know much about that game, but I'm glad that their campaign did well. Jacob says, did you see the Oblivion remaster or announcement release? I heard about it, but I have not. It is not the type of game that I have played, and so I haven't dug too deep into it. But is it something that you're excited about, Jacob, this Oblivion remaster? I see some suggestions. Okay, we're getting to the point where you're suggesting some games for my question. Let's see if I can. Jeff mentioned Planet Unknown. I could definitely see that. I'm going to shake my whole camera here if I take notes. I will come back to the list later, come back to the comments, take a look at what you suggested, starting with games like Planet Unknown, Foundations of Rome, Creature Caravan, yeah, Flamecraft. Yeah, great suggestions here for games that came out over the last 5 years that Stonemaier Games could have published because they fit into the types of games that we make if they had been submitted to us. Socrates said, have you considered purchasing the IP from Merchant's Cove? Have I played it? I haven't played Merchant's Cove, and no, we're not looking to take the liability of having to fulfill a crowdfunding campaign that another company has said that they're unable to fulfill. Yeah, that is a major liability to take on. See a lot of good suggestions here. Yeah, I'm going to go back over this list after I get off this video and take notes about this. Do I have any other topics? While I'm scrolling for questions, do I have any other topics to cover today? Again, Rolling Realms 50 is today. My question of the day is games that Stonemaier Games may have published if they've been submitted to us over the last 5 years. Here we go. Connor says, can you share what we can do as gamers, designers, publishers, convention organizers to help in pushing back against the current administration's actions that affect us? Kind of, yeah, there's a couple things. One, you can just kind of be aware of what's going on and be aware of accurate information, because there is unfortunately a lot of misinformation that is spread. Someone referenced an article earlier that is actively spreading misinformation. So be aware of what the correct information is. You can always call your representatives and just let them know that U.S. companies and U.S. citizens are being negatively impacted by the tariffs. And I think in general, you can kind of, more so than normal, I think you can try to look out for publishers and retailers, because retailers are heavily being impacted by the tariffs, in how you budget games. Like an example of this would be if typically you spend most of your budget on games on crowdfunding. That's great, but maybe try to spread out your budget over the next few months from a little bit for crowdfunding, a little bit directly from publishers for games that they currently have in stock, and for retailers buying something from your preferred local or online retailer. I think diversifying your purchases, I think, especially on current inventory that retailers and publishers have, I think can make a big difference. Another digital game question from Tariff. I know the developers of the digital version of Scythe decided that implementing the expansions was technically infeasible. Is that ever likely to change? I hope so. They've told me that it's largely a funding issue, and so we now give them 50% of the proceeds from Board Game Arena to support them. So hopefully that's helping them, but I don't fully know if that is. So yeah, we'll see. I hope it will change. Yeah, we'll see about that. Director Dan says, I can see Stonemaier having published Deep Regrets. I'm very curious to play Deep Regrets, Dan, but I haven't played that one yet. People are saying there's already 3 episodes of Andor. That's awesome. Okay, well, maybe we will have to jump in on that very soon. Bonobo Smith says, regarding accessibility, how much thought is actually put into this? Having a ton of space, but then using tiny font and so on. So we have a whole section on our website about accessibility. If you go to the Stonemaier Games website and go to About and go to Accessibility, you can see a chart that rates all of our games in terms of accessibility, and it talks about all the different types of accessibility, whether it's learning, retention, time, visual, presence, language, purchase, scope, inclusion. There are lots of different ways that we approach and actively think about accessibility for our games all the time, every day. It's a huge part of what we think about. Also, does it save? No, I think you're asking, does using tiny fonts save money? No, it doesn't save money. It really just is annoying for people. So and it's not just about font size, it's also about font contrast. A lot of decisions go into the visual side of our games. In fact, we have one person on our oversight team, a proofreader that we reach out to for every project, who is vision impaired, specifically in terms of colorblind friendliness. And so they are looking at every one of our games from the vision impairment perspective. Monkey Butler says, I'm currently looking at a board gaming table. It was designed as a wargaming table, so it's 54 inches wide. I'm concerned that may be too wide for typical board gaming. Thoughts on width when you design? I do try to think about the amount of table space that our games take up, because I think everyone has a different table size. Some are really big, some are a lot smaller. It is tough to take that into consideration for certain games. Like Finspan takes up a fair amount of table space, but I really like the way the mats work on the table. Vantage does take up some table space. You have a smaller board, but you need the box on the table because the box holds all the cards. You need that on that table next to you. But in terms of your personal space on Vantage, it doesn't take up that much space. It's really just the size of this player mat that I showed you a minute ago. So it is something that we actively think about in designing our games. How much table space does the game take up? Goes back to Bonobo Smith's question about accessibility. Socrates says, any current plans on maybe making a campaign legacy type expansion for Vantage in the future? Something like the Rise of Fenris was for Scythe. No, Vantage is a complete game out of the box. I've included everything that I could possibly include in this game, in the core game itself. It's designed specifically not to be a campaign game. I believe it's a major asset of the game that it is not a campaign game, that you get to crash land on the planet, have an adventure, ramp up quickly in terms of your skills, and then have another adventure in the future, carrying over only your knowledge from the previous game. That is part of the thrill of the game. And Legacy is all about permanent changes that can't be undone. That is not the type of game that Vantage is designed to be. So no, Vantage is a complete game out of the box. There will be no expansions for it. And I thought about this recently. One other way to say this is, if you are playing Vantage and you wonder to yourself, oh, I wish it would be really cool if the game had this or did this. That's probably in the game somewhere already. You just haven't discovered it yet. So, yeah, I mean, there is nothing about Vantage that will be a legacy game. So if that's something you wonder as you're playing, could it be a legacy game? Could it be a campaign game? That won't be in it. But in terms of the things that you might wonder about as you're playing, there's a decent chance, a pretty good chance that I have built that into the game, and it's up to you to discover it. Anthony says, what is the reason you only publish games with up to 5 players, or at least starting has to play at least up to 5 players? Is there a selling point benefit of this compared to 1 to 4 players? Does adding a 5th player add challenge cost to designing? It does add a challenge, a cost, yeah, in terms of downtime, playing time. It does add additional costs for components, but it is just a core part of who we are at Stonemaier Games. We want games that you can play with by yourself, solo, with a roommate, significant other, a partner, 2-player, but also that you can play it at bigger game nights. And 4 players, that just doesn't say bigger game nights to me. I do appreciate mini games, and I love mini games that only play up to 4 players. But for us, we really want them to play up to 6 players, ideally. And just for some of our games, that doesn't work, and we're willing to go down to 5 players. But we're trying to have our games, that's just, I don't know, it's just part of who we are in terms of the types of audiences we want to reach. Actually, it goes back to accessibility. We want to reach more different types of people and different types of playing groups. Matthew says, what are your plans for retirement? I don't have any plans for retirement. I really love the work that I do at Stonemaier Games, and I'm hoping to do it for a long, long time. Svartson says, will there be an expansion to Red Rising, and will there be more Wingspan coming to BGA? Wingspan's already on BGA, so we don't plan on putting more Wingspan on Board Game Arena. But as for Red Rising, we are looking at the potential for more content for that game. We've been thinking about it and working on different options for a long time. And one of them is in playtesting now. I'll see if playtesters have fun with it. If they do, we might consider it. Not necessarily an expansion, but something for Red Rising. Garrett says, for the small game that you're looking for, so we are looking for something that's actually a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, a small, light, very easy to teach and learn game, the type of game like So Clove or Just One, Caution Signs, Blob Party, where you can learn the game from a few rules on the back of the box and get to the table really quickly and easily. Garrett says, does it have to play well from 2 to 5 players and beyond? Really, we're looking for probably 2 to 7 or 2 to 8 for this type of game. Or are you focusing on higher player counts or being more lax about the lower player count standards? How about solo? Solo might be really tough for these types of games. My hope is that we will find a type of game that does play at 2 players. We might make an exception for that type of game if we find the right one and say that it can start at 3 players. But really, ideally, it would play at 2. And one of the top submissions so far did actually play pretty well at 2 players. So that is my hope for the game. Nick says, does Expeditions have a digital version forthcoming anywhere? Currently, there's only the Tabletopia version of the game, which is a physics-driven version of Expeditions. I am hoping that one of our partners will create the digital version of it, but currently, I don't know if it's made much progress. So I have hope for it, but not yet. Tony says, since we talked to Andor and other games, the Stonemaier Games could have published, if you had the ability to use the Star Wars license to create one new original Star Wars game, what era would you think you'd choose to set it in? Good question. What era? I think probably the original trilogy, which I think now includes like the Mandalorian time period. I think that would probably be it. But I might also try to find a way for it to span the different eras, because I really, as a Star Wars fan, I do love all the different eras for different ways. Really, I was surprised when I went to the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser when it was operational. And one of my most emotional moments there was when Rey showed up, which really surprised me because Rey is not tied to the nostalgia of Star Wars from my childhood. But when Rey showed up and the actor playing Rey on the Star Cruiser really looked like Rey and really acted like Rey, and it was like, wow, this is really happening. Like Rey showed up here for us. It was incredible. So even the new episodes 7 through 9, there's something really awesome about those too. So I could see them being part of that. Shadow Lego says, are you still open for design submissions during the tariff situation? Yep. Yeah, our submission process is still very much open. We plan years into the future. We already know a lot of what will happen over the next 3-4 years at Stonemaier Games. So it's just it's one of the reasons that we're taking action on the tariffs, because we want to continue to have that future be possible at Stonemaier Games. So yeah, we are definitely still accepting submissions. I'm still seeing a lot of great ideas for games that we could have published. I know I'm not saying them out loud, but I am reading them, and I will go back through and read them in the comments after I get off the video, so I can add them to the list that I'm making. Ed says, have you played Unstoppable by Renegade? I have not. I'm looking forward to playing that 2 players specifically, but I have not played it yet. I'm hoping to play it at Geekway if I get the chance. Mark says, is Vantage a puzzle-solving game in the vein of Myst? It's a good question. There are puzzles in Vantage, but they are not the core focus of the game. Puzzles are things that you might discover in Vantage. There is a type of puzzle that you're solving every time you take a turn in Vantage, because every time you make a decision in the game. So an example would be you walk. In fact, the example I've shared in the updates is you walk into a clearing, and there's like a weird portal thing that is shimmering in the air, and the game gives you 6 different ways that you can interact with that portal. The action options are move, engage, look at it, help, take something from it, or overpower. 6 different ways that you can interact with it. So that is part of the puzzle, using your eyes and the information that you have from the description on the card. How do you choose to interact with that? And then there's a mechanical puzzle as you choose one of those and go about the steps of trying to interact with it. And you will always, Vantage, a key is that you will always be successful. You're never going to use your turn to do something and then just fail at it. You will go through with it, but it might take more time, health, and morale than you expected. And so the puzzle is mitigating both on your own and cooperatively, if you're playing with other players, mitigating those things that happen as you are encountering the thing that you're encountering. And that's on every single turn of the game in Vantage. Chet says, what's my chocolate of the day? My treat of the day today isn't chocolate, but it is Billy Goat chips, or Goat Eat chips, my favorite chips. If you're ever in St. Louis, I highly recommend getting these chips. They're made here. Chad says, have you ever had a chocolate-covered something that just didn't work? Generally, other than chocolate-covered cherries, generally I don't enjoy chocolate-covered fruit. And also mint gives me headaches. And so as much as I love, or used to love, chocolate and mint together, I cannot eat it anymore, unfortunately. Spaceman asked, what was today's question? Today's question was about, from the games published over the last 5 years by other companies, what is the game that you've seen where you thought, Stonemaier Games could have published this game? Like, this could have been a Stonemaier game. This fits well into what Stonemaier Games publishes. Rick Rivera says, have you considered using your game mechanisms for other franchises like Scythe and Warhammer? Oh, Warhammer for Scythe. Not consciously, no. Not that I can think of. I actually, probably at some point in time, I did think about that a little bit, but not consciously, no. Stuart also says, someone else had a question about positivity today. Stuart says, how do you stay so unrelentingly positive? And the truth is, I'm not always positive, but I try to make the choice to be positive. Even in tough, stressful times, I try to find joy. The pursuit of happiness I mentioned earlier, I try to pursue happiness and try to find the positive in things that I'm playing, that I'm watching, that I'm reading, that I'm talking about. And like, one of the things really that uplifted me this week in this announcement that we are pursuing or joining a lawsuit against the executive branch is the outpouring of support for that. And yeah, there's definitely an outpouring of people who are not in support of it too. Some of it unrelenting, and some of it more constructive. But really, there's been a lot of outpouring of support from other companies relating to what we're going through. And that's been really uplifting for me. So trying to find that silver lining, even in tough times, I make the choice to do it and make that choice. Yeah. All right. I know I'm a little bit overboard here. Let's see. Okay, so I'll give Chad the last question of the day today. So I posted an Expeditions and Scythe update. If you missed it, you can go to our website on Scythe or Expeditions. You can see the archive there. And he says, was Jakob excited to start working on more 1920 plus Expeditions artwork? And I think he was. I shared in the latest update an illustration that he has been working on for the new Expeditions expansion that won't come out until 2026. We work well in advance on these games, but I think Jakob is having fun with it, and I'm seeing it in the quality of his work. Okay, one last question here. Where's the cat? Show us the cat. Our cat is Walter, and Walter is not in my office right now. You can see my other cat, my late cat Biddy, on the wall behind me. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me for today's hour. I'll be back next week. If you had fun today, I'll be back next week. I do this every Wednesday, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you think of later in the comments. Just post them in the comments on YouTube, and I will see them there. Have a great day. Find joy in your day somehow today, whether it's through a Stonemaier game, a treat of the day, or something else. And I will see you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.